lot of kind of theater out there in the media space that I'm kind of getting bored of. But one thing that I wanted to discuss with you over the weekend was the tragic news of 6 Israeli hostages who were murdered, executed, point blank range, shot in the head. And it did take me back. I don't know about you, but it took me back to that like October 8th feeling a little bit.
Yeah. Where were you when you found out?
I was away. I was with my family. We were all away together, like end of summer.
Like, were you out? Were you going to sleep? Did you wake up in the morning?
I think it was the morning. It was the morning.
And
my wife came by and was just like with a sad face and like, said about Hirsch and then about the others, about what had happened. I'll start by saying that it reminded me of this feeling I got where I was like, even with the worst tragedies over time, like post October 7th, you get lured into debating things that shouldn't even be debated. Like the fresh aftermath of October 7th was like the debate is over. We know where the evil is. We know who the monsters are. We see the fundamental differences between Israel and its enemies. We see the barbarism. I'm not interested in debating Israel's right to exist or defend itself. I just want them to do it. And this was a reminder of that to me, that same sentiment of what are we debating here? Why are we trying to justify, make explanations, signal to a world that detests Israel for its very existence that no, we should exist. You'll see. Here's why. I just lost any interest in that moment again, where I'm like, why are we indulging with this? Which eventually you get lured back into doing and sort of have to do. But I just lost any inclination.
So it's funny you had that reaction. I haven't really thought about the outer facing issue at all. Like for me, this is very interior. I'm actually more emotional about it. I'm still emotional about it, probably more than even October 7th.
How come?
To me, this really felt like when I think of like Hirsch's mom, it really feels really, really devastating in a way that October 7th didn't even feel devastating. This really feels like a real loss of hope and like optimism, and like it feels like where we woke up in the wrong timeline of the dimension, where like one dimension was like we got to see Hirsch reunited with his mother. We woke up in the timeline where that doesn't happen, and it's like I find it very, very devastating, to the point where I'm not, kind of like you said with October 7th, I'm not even thinking about the debate that's going on Twitter. It's just internal. And like, it's like an internal family problem now, where it's like, I don't even care whatever, let's just say who Candace or Crystal or Brianna Joy Gray even has to say about this. I'm more like, I want answers from Netanyahu. Like, I want answers from the government that wasn't able to save them. I want answers from like up high on like why this happened. I'm not really at the point where I'm even thinking about like how this is being portrayed in the media. I don't even care so much right now about that.
I agree. That's my point. That's what I'm saying. I don't care about that theater. It's irrelevant to me because, but I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle. My instinct is less about turning my rage on the Israeli government for not doing enough, but rather being reminded over who's really responsible here for this. And this instinct to say, how could you, Netanyahu? It's like, wait a second. I do think it's obviously the Israeli government. It's their responsibility and they're obligated to find them and rescue them. But let's not forget that they're being held and murdered by these people, and why the outrage isn't unanimously channeled at the murderers rather than the people who weren't able, unfortunately, to save them. I see that coming, and that's infuriating and sickening to me.
So I do diverge from you there. I think that outwardly facing, that is the conversation. Like, remember for a second why they're there in the first place. But around our own Shabbos tables within our own country and like within our own community, I do find it at the very least interesting, or at least like appropriate at this point, to start asking questions about like, sure, they should never have been there in the first place, but they are there. And is this government capable of winning this war? Like, would another government have been able to save them? Now, again, not on Piers Morgan, but I think I feel less than I had before that it might be time for some of those internal debates to start happening. It feels like a real signal. This was a real signal. Like something has gone.
Well,
something has not gone right here.
According to the story or the reports, the IDF heard the gunshots. Their sensors picked up the gunshots, and they were this close to rescuing them, and then that's why they were executed.
Right. On the right. On the right, you can say, why weren't they there 3 months ago?
Correct.
And on the left, you could say, everything, why didn't they negotiate a deal? But either way, you're dissatisfied right now.
Yes. And I actually obviously defer to the right, where I say, but that's where my outrage is more like, why are you caring to put your PR people out there to signal to the world how virtuous you are by not prioritizing the rescue of hostages over trying to minimize civilian casualties or minimize the collateral damage of war or whatever it may be, effectively saying we're not prioritizing what our primary mission as a government is, which is to protect our citizens, our soldiers, and rescue our hostages. Every effort it seems to be that there's an awful lot of energy being put out on the Israel side to let the world know how, virtuous and good they are and how good they're being, rather than prioritizing what's important and what they're responsible to do. So I'm saying that's where my dissatisfaction comes is like, to the extent that Israel further asserts itself and does what it needs to do, I think they've actually held back a lot, and they had a few weeks of a window post October 7th to get. But the truth is, who am I to say how it actually works internally in intelligence and finding out where things are? But then my rage turns to, remember the All Eyes on Rafah campaign? All these people said, don't go in, don't escalate. I was like, that's where these people were. We know these things. So stop worrying about All Eyes on Rafah hashtags on Instagram and do what you have to do. Right. Now, why Israel can't do that effectively? Is it American pressure? Are they saying they can, or they will withhold things? Like, I don't know the calculus, and I can't pretend to have the hubris to know that.
That's the question that internally they're asking. What exactly is going on here?
That I have those same questions, obviously. And it's like, I don't forget who the villains are, but I wonder in terms of effectiveness of the efficacy of the war effort, what's preventing it from being won? Right. And the answer a lot of people are giving are Netanyahu's political machinations. You don't buy it? I don't buy it. Do you think 6 dead hostages makes Netanyahu in a better position or in a worse position as a leader? I don't.
Well, I mean, I think that this was bad for him. Like, I don't think this was good for him. But all the decisions that led up to it. It seems, again, I really don't know. I can't go too far into detail. It seems from what I've been listening to that a longer war, the war ending is not good for him. I mean, that's what people are saying.
Right. But what about the war being won? Is that good for him or is that bad for him?
Well, the military is telling him the war has been won militarily.
You're saying essentially that he wants to perpetuate a war costing Israeli civilian and soldiers' lives and the lives of the hostages, putting them further at risk to avoid the political consequences of October 7th.
It's not
and
me.
The other things. Not you.
I think people are saying that, and I think it's as nasty as it sounds. It's hard to believe. It's hard to believe. I'd love to hear someone make the case convincingly that that's absurd. But I haven't really heard anyone be able to make that case so convincingly that, like, that's not the craziest thing in the world to believe.
My instinct, if I'm trying to be impartial and not just like give him any cover and try to assume all the political intentions, to win decisively, destroy Hamas, rescue the hostages, defeat Hezbollah in the north, is a far more effective political winning strategy than sort of prolonging the campaign to sort of keep himself away from consequence. Or it seems to me that politically that would be more beneficial to his legacy than prolonging it with all the hiccups and mistakes and death and suffering along the way.
So then the next question is, why hasn't he done it?
Okay. I don't know. I'd be interested to talk to military.
He's not capable of it.
Not capable, or there's, for all we know, there's American pressure not to do certain things. There's ships that can be withheld, that's saying we can't support. These are the areas I don't know. I have the questions. I hate the idea that you have the military capability to do something and be effective and be victorious and won't do it. That was like our conversation with Yaron Brook, where he's like, they're not going to do it. And you're going to have a situation because they operate from an ethic. They operate from an altruistic ethic of putting the lives of populations of enemy regimes that fight them above the priority and of the safety of their own citizens. Israel continues to tolerate its own pain and suffering, and that's what they do. And that's not a Netanyahu thing. That's sort of at the core of Israel's ethics, which is what Yaron was saying was the problem. The problem is, and America operates the same way. They're willing to put soldiers and citizens in harm's way and compromise their own safety for this grand ethic of self-sacrifice, of, and that's ultimately why it doesn't succeed, and why these Western countries engaged in warfare in this type are not successful and don't ever have clear, decisive victory, because they're not willing to win. They have a different ethic. And I think that, in part, plus, who knows? It's also, I don't know. Plus, the sheer difficulties of maybe trying to actually do this and root out where Hamas is, and I think seeing what we saw in this horrible tragedy of these 6 people who were killed, maybe that's why it's very difficult, because if you get close enough but not all the way, you lose them. It gives you some perspective on that. The IDF apparently was 10 minutes away from rescuing them.
The issue to me is, when something like this happens, you shouldn't be questioning whether or not your leader wanted it to happen or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like that should be off the table. The fact that people are questioning it is the problem.
You think they're crazy to question it?
No, I'm saying the fact that there's even a possibility, the fact that this is even in people, that there's such a trust issue that something like this can happen, and the culture goes there, is a problem. It's a big problem.
Well, Douglas Murray pointed something out really profound on Piers Morgan yesterday when he was asked about it. It's like, why do you think that there's protests in Israel against Netanyahu, given the situation here, for a deal, and he hasn't been able to get a deal? And he said, well, it's interesting, Piers. when you have a democratic country that allows for political dissent and pressure, that's where the pressure is going to come. It's not like Hamas is an entity in which you can protest against. You're not gonna see pressure against them because it's useless. As if to say, these hostages just died of natural causes, and if only Hamas got the right deal, they'd be down to do it. It's like, no, they're monsters. They don't care. This is what Hamas does. And so when it's completely hopeless to protest Hamas in the streets of Israel, you put political pressure on things where you think there's actually a feasible chance that something can be done and something can be effective. And because Netanyahu is democratically elected, we want to find a vacuum, and we want to fill that with a place where you think you can affect some sort of change, because you're grieving. He said the Israeli populace is grieving from this, and it feels useless and listless to just protest against Hamas. They're not going to change. They are what they are. But the water will find its way to the people that it actually could and put pressure on. And I thought that was interesting.
I think it's interesting. Everything he says is interesting and insightful and great and smart.
And the BBC. BBC.
Watching him actually do the tour, the circuit after this, I felt a little bit like are you being paid by the Israeli government? I thought it felt a little bit like, if there was ever a time to be like, perhaps this was avoidable, perhaps we could be doing better, like, instead of 100% on pro Netanyahu here. I thought this was the time. I actually was a little bit taken aback.
You watched him on Piers, you mean?
Yeah, I watched a couple of things. I didn't watch the whole thing on Piers, but I watched him do I watched a couple of clips that came my way. And it was just if you love Israel, you can also be lovingly critical of it at times. Like,
if you watch the whole interview, I came away like he
Yeah.
acknowledges
so
why it's legitimate and it's fair, but he also says, like, why do we always assume? It's like there's this weird presumption we make in the West that we forget who we're dealing with. The concept of a deal is a meaningless concept to people like Hamas. So we should have no illusions. Yeah. In other words, he's responding to the critique that this was a failure of getting a deal with Hamas rather than a military failure of not having victory. That's different. Yeah. He says we always think, just like Aaron Brooks said in our episode, we think that these things come from compromise, as if people just gather around the table and strike a nice deal amongst like-minded human beings. He's like, that's not what we're doing.
But it's not just like students at a Columbia encampment that's doing it. Like Yoav Gallant, like the war cabinet is saying we don't understand why this deal wasn't made last week. So, it's like people who do understand what's going on are criticizing him too. Again, also, and I don't think now's the time to be divided and and all that. I'm more responding, I think, to the videos that you put out and some of the instinct to always fully back the Israeli government publicly. I'm starting to feel a little bit, I started to bump against that this week a little bit.
I actually didn't feel like I was defending the Israeli government as much as reminding myself and people who the villain is here. It's one thing to be negligent or not derelict in your duty, not do everything you could do, but Hamas could also just give back the hostages and not kill them. In other words, why is the onus on Israel to make a deal that's satisfactory to Hamas? They've offered deals. They keep rejecting them. Hamas is holding these people. They're murderous and have no intention of good faith deals. To begin with, there is no partner for peace. So the only way to do this is militarily. What I was saying is not I'm backing the Israeli government. More, I'm arguing against the fact that it wasn't the lack of a deal that led to the deaths of these hostages.
They shouldn't have been there for the last.
It's the malice of Hamas and the hatred of them and their hatred of Jews and Israelis that led to this. And the failure is, if you're going to criticize the Israeli government, is a military critique of why they couldn't effectively rescue them. But going up against monsters. I'm critiquing the mission failed, and you can critique that, but don't be mistaken to think it was a lack of a deal. That's what I'm.
You're saying the whole deal making, but they did get hostages back in a deal.
No. They at some point they got to a deal because of, I think, unrelenting military pressure.
Right. So I think what Yoav Gallant said last week was, so our plan was unrelenting military pressure until they're backed into a corner again, and we'll make a second deal.
Right.
And so Yoav Gallant said, "Hey, we did it. They're at the table. They're ready to make a deal. It worked."
Weren't they rejecting ceasefire proposals?
From what I understood, they had some sort of deal put together, and then last second, Netanyahu sort of made this public face of no, wait, there's one more thing. I won't do something in the Philadelphia corridor or whatever. And everyone involved was kind of looking at each other what are you talking about? This plan has worked. Why? What is this?
I didn't hear about that. I've heard only.
No, I mean, that's the thing. That's the thing that people are
pointing to.
This last minute point that he brought up at the last minute. And so people, I think, were genuinely, sincerely going, wait, do you not want a deal or what? Because this is a weird thing to do right now.
You might be talking about something I'm not as aware of in terms of the last iteration.
I mean, that's the big thing. I think he said what the Philadelphia corridor. I don't even know the name. Yeah, right. It's on the border with Egypt. It's basically how Hamas will rearm themselves. And so the concession Israel was making was, we'll leave for 6 weeks and then come back. But we will give you that time to possibly rearm in exchange for hostages. We're willing to make that deal with you. And there was so again, who knows if that would have gone through or how they would have, respected it on their side. But then Netanyahu sort of squashed that, and everyone was looking at each other wait a second, sure, it wasn't perfect, but we're dealing with monsters. And so this is what you know.
And so my only response to that is that could very well be at the same time this idea of even negotiating with people like this is a mistake, and the only way to get hostages back is like militarily.
I mean, I'm pretty convinced of that.
In other words, Gilad Shalit, right, was 1,000 some odd prisoners, one of them being Yahya Sinwar.
Right.
And that's what, like, Yaron Brook, I'll go back to that episode with him. He's like, you cannot reward kidnappers with what they want. You cannot reward terrorists. You will get more kidnapping, and you will get more of this. This is that is immoral to do that. Now, it's easy to say that when it's not your own children in captivity and you do anything you can to get them. But I actually think, I wonder if the more effective tactic is to just be unrelenting until they surrender and give them back. This illusion that it's all about striking a deal, that's what Douglas like, as if like-minded people sit around the table, you know, and strike up, whatever, you know, like that's what we do. No, peace comes through victory, not negotiation. Right. And therefore, you know, again, I'm already hear myself speaking out of turn on military tactics and how this stuff all works. This is all from an observer's perspective. I'm speaking as the layperson here.
Well, you can't.
That was my critique. People are going to say, how can Netanyahu botch this? I'm like, Hamas just murdered like 6 people because the IDF got too close to rescuing them. And you are granting legitimacy to their captivity by immediately instinctively turning to a Netanyahu or any government official, whoever, who botched a deal with these people. You're saying they have a right to, if that's your instinct, then you're effectively, without realizing it, legitimizing and validating the hold and claim the kidnappers have on these hostages.
Can it just be not the right they have to it, but the reality of it, where like you are dealing with psychopathic, suicidal monsters?
But we're trying to ascribe fault and blame. Whose fault and blame is it that they ended up murdering them at point blank range? Who's accountable for that? I would say they are.
Who's ultimately accountable for it? Yeah, I guess. I mean, so just back to what I said earlier, like there are degrees to which you can address that. I think there's different appropriate settings for it.
Yes, but but isn't it a weird thing when you hear people hear the news of that and say, "Oh, how could you, Netanyahu?"
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I wasn't as perturbed by it. But yeah.
I'm just saying.
I think what you're saying is important for people to hear. Yeah. Who aren't around the Shabbos table.
Right.
I hear that. But between you, but between you and me, there are more nuanced conversations to have.
If somebody's negotiating a ransom for their child, right, and they have some sort of deal on the table, and maybe they don't pay or whatever, and then the kidnapper kills the child.
But this isn't.
Who's the evil one there?
But this is, from what I'm saying, this is not a referendum just on the hostages. It's a referendum on the last 20 years of his leadership, of why we're in this war to begin.
That's a separate conversation.
Well, I mean, I think it's all tied in though. Like when people are in the streets, they're not specifically saying Hirsch should be alive. I think what they're saying is like, you got us into this war and you can't get us out of it. And like, we need a change.
Yeah. I'm not, I wasn't going up against that kind of thing. I was going up against the very precise condemnation that is an ire that is summoned at the reaction to this. To me, it's very inappropriate to turn your ire to Netanyahu in terms of accountability and blame in a specific sense. Like, remember who's doing this.
How have you responded, like, emotionally? Do you think about it a lot, or has it like been a rough week? Besides the Netanyahu thing, just the news.
The news, I mean, it's pretty gutting. I felt that, given that there had been hostage rescues one after the other, you were getting this sort of sense that, okay, like,
right, the assassinations also.
Yeah, just stuff that was that seemed like it was going in the right direction in terms of victory for Israel. But and that it's possible. Like everyone, I think in my mind though, there was a certain part of me that like accepted the fate in a sense that they're in Hamas hands, and I just have no illusions about the brutality.
Right.
So there's a part of me that sadly accepted this possibility more so than being rescued or released.
That's pretty.
If I'm being honest, it's horrible. But it was I think I grieved at the time when everyone's taken, because you know what they do. They kill these people. They film them. They make them say things at gunpoint. They film videos of murders publicly and proudly. They beat people on trucks of their naked bodies and parade them through the streets. So to think of all these people in the hands of that, the hard thing to think about, I've carried sort of the weight of that, like, grief this whole time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I just had no illusions about it. And for me, it's always like, oh my gosh, either people were released or they rescued somebody. And it's a huge celebration because to my default position, sadly, and I don't want to I'm not trying to give people, I don't want people to lose hope. I'm trying to do it, but it's always, I'm always more pleasantly shocked and elated to you know what I mean? That
I was deluded into thinking that there was, I thought that's how the story would end. That's how it felt like the third act of Hirsch's mom should be, you know?
Yeah. In the immediate aftermath of October 7th, I thought we were going to see videos weekly of public executions.
Everyone did.
Terrified of such a thing.
That wasn't the plan.
You know, and it didn't happen. But it's starting to. You see them like releasing psychologically like tormenting videos with weird music of them criticizing Israel, stop bomb. You know, they're obviously under duress and being forced to say things.
Did you watch the videos?
Some, a little bit, as much as I
Where do you find them?
I don't know.
Twitter
probably.
Yeah,
it circulates. Those things circulate on Twitter just to see, like, I don't know. I mean, I obviously also saw the most despicable stuff. I mean, just as there's nothing that the Israel and Jew haters won't do and stoop to. There's not a level they won't stoop to. That's another part of what's maddening. You see like these gross tweets from certain folks saying how I just don't want to name them. I don't even want to. I mean, you know, Jake Shields, Jackson
notable
Hinkle.
people. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, millions of followers, like the new anti-Semitic right.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I happen to think Jackson Hinkle is probably a Chinese spy. I'm not even joking. Do you know who he is?
No.
Have you seen his tweets? I think he's a Chinese spy. I'm not joking. He went to Venezuela. He's called the MAGA Communist Party, this sort of alt-right, semi-pro-Trump, but also pro-Russia, pro-Venezuela, pro-China thing. And he's really messed up. I mean, he makes fun of hostages. He makes fun of kidnapped people. They posted a picture of Hirsch in IDF uniform saying, this is a genocidal Zio, and they called him terrible things and said he's served the foreign military. Don't be fooled. Like, you know, just the sickest things you could say with no ounce of humanity. And when you're reminded that that's out there, that's also very depressing, and that people respond to it. But that's Twitter, which is the cesspool of human activity.
Right.
You know, it shows the worst of us. You know, it is.
It's like at a fish show during a song, you go into the hallway and you see people dancing. That's what Twitter is.
So yeah, when I see that too, I'm like, really? Like, if it reminds me of October 8th and like 9th, like if we can't all agree that this is good and this is bad, that's the world we're in of moral confusion.
Yeah.
That's sad to me as well. But I guess with something as public as Hirsch and his family, and speaking at the DNC, which was somewhat encouraging to see like them getting that.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, I didn't see this happening.
You know, the Chagim are coming up on a year almost. God forbid. Crazy. Yeah. So it's all very, I'm so not looking forward.
Yeah.
It's very hard to think about the high holidays now.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Did you happen to see this Tucker Carlson episode?
I saw
Holocaust or World War II revisionist historian.
I saw responses to it.
I have to kind of probably watch the whole thing, but this guy, it's just funny. Are we at this point now in the dialogue, in the discourse where we have to reconsider, were the Germans the bad ones? Was Churchill the bad one?
Mm-hmm.
Let's get edgy and discuss that. I was just like, you know. But I guess that could be for another episode when we unpack that, because it's making its rounds all over. Yeah. And this guy is showing very weird images.
I wonder if the silver lining there is like, I'm going to get esoteric for a second, but like sure, take the Holocaust away from us, because that's not the reason we have Israel. we don't have Israel because of the Holocaust. So take it away, and take it away. We have Israel because it's like our land and we're indigenous to it. So like we need to remember that, and you need to know that, and the fight you need to have to stay there becomes more clear. You
think the effort on this Holocaust revisionism is motivated by a need to strip the world of Jewish sympathy for Jews?
I do think,
and suffering.
I think that's part of it, and part of it is that the Holocaust is the black mark on like Western intellectualism and civilization,
right?
And in order to redeem themselves, they need to invalidate it ever happening.
Well, I guess in a way there's two ways. Either you support Israel, right? Or say the Holocaust didn't happen, so we don't have to.
Right. And it's a lot easier to just deny it.
But it's funny. Remember growing up, you're like worried as Holocaust survivors die out and their testimonies get forgiven.
Wait. So I want to go back to that though. Supporting Israel is acknowledging that they did something wrong.
Right.
Saying you're right, we did that, and we'll fix it by giving you Israel.
You're owed it. Yeah.
This is saying we never did anything wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what You're clarifying. That's what I mean. It's like, hey, either we have to support Israel and acknowledge the Holocaust, but there's another way.
Oh, right. Yeah.
There's another way. We don't have to support Israel, but in order to do that, let's make sure we invalidate the Holocaust properly so the Jews don't deserve that sympathy and protection that is Israel.
Right.
And you're saying, yeah, take it if you want. It's ours anyway.
We don't need sympathy and protection. Yeah.
Right.
We do, but
yes, I disagree with you in some sense that, like, I think the Holocaust demonstrates the unique need that Jewish people have faced such a level of persecution historically that securing Jewish safety in the world, at least to have some kind of an Israel, is needed.
Yeah.
Why Israel in particular? There's other reasons. Like
that's my more esoteric.
Yeah. But what was I going to say? I just find it. I don't know. I
cut you off. You were onto something good.
I know I was. What was I saying? We were talking about.
So you could either support Israel or strip.
Yeah, I said that.
Yeah,
but it was something about the way they're having these conversations about it, where we're calling into question. I don't remember. I lost the train of thought. But it was like just reevaluating this idea of the narrative as if it's just a narrative. Oh, the guy was claiming like, they actually felt bad for these prisoners of war or something along those lines. Like they had to kill them quicker because otherwise they would have just starved slowly. I don't know. Right. I have to watch the episode. I don't want to like make determinations or takes on it until I watch it.
I'm also like, I think about the Holocaust a lot because I write about it, and I think about what it was like, not in retrospect, but while people were actually going through it. And I do get the sense that there's the Holocaust, and then there's the story we tell about the Holocaust, and those are two separate things. So like I'm interested in people being like, curious. The Holocaust was different than the way it's told by like the Jewish community. Like, it might have, maybe it was worse even. What I tend to find is actually way worse than people talk about. Like it was way more brutal and disgusting. It wasn't this like, gas chambers are like this nice clean part of the story. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like the most like sanitary part of it. But then there's the flip side of that where it's like, it was different than you were told. But
I just question the motivations of these people who are curious to investigate. They're not good faith actors. They are trying to strip the world of sympathy for the Jews.
Tucker's doing?
Well, what I was going to say is the sad thing growing up is everyone always had this our community had this concern, like what happens when the survivors of the Holocaust are not with us anymore with their stories and everything like that. And how do we preserve the memory of what happened? But we're way past that now. Now the trajectory is not only will we not hear their stories, but people are trying to flip the script on the whole thing, saying the Germans were the virtuous ones. It's exponentially getting, it's not that, we just don't remember the suffering. Obviously the Germans were the evil ones, but we don't really remember what happened and we forget it. Forget about forgetting history. Talk about perverting history. I think that's where we're at. And it's like, wow, that happened right quick after October 7th, which is odd that after an attack on Jews comparable, for the same reasons and same motivations, you would see the perversion to make, Jews' biggest enemies historically, look better. What's Tucker's motivation? I have no idea. It's quite something to see. Psychologically, it's hard to figure out. Like, what is he trying?
Is it just,
he has this weird blind spot for Russia too, where he went there, remember, on this big Russian trip and said, the grocery stores are nice. The subway is nice. It
might not be so weird. It probably makes a ton of sense once you figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah, but I don't know.
I mean, I
don't know. He's harder to figure out.
I thought it was just he was kind of carving out a new lane for himself and like trying to get the views.
I think he's a little more mysterious, Tucker. Plays a little more of a 3D chess in his operation. I
think so too. I think he's. I think he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Candace, I don't think she has a plan.
Right.
I do think Tucker has a plan.
I think Tucker does have a plan, and there's a savviness and he's just harder to figure out motivationally.
He's been doing it at the highest levels for decades. Yeah. He knows how this works.
And I think for him, it's more like that. Let's get this guy on. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
He'll say some things and people will talk. And I'm not saying I endorse it, but I'm listening and I'm not scared of ideas that are objectionable. I'm not scared to talk about it. It's about expansionism. In other words, that kind of thing. I'm going to throw a little shade at Ben Shapiro, but leave room to say I'm not actually talking about Ben Shapiro. I think people like that are despicable, but I love them. Like, talk out of both sides of his mouth. He's, creating a certain conversation centered around his show as a cultural mover and shaker, and in a more calculated way.
He'll be around for a lot longer than Kansas,
I think
in a serious way.
I think for him is he's playing it at a higher level for sure than just shooting from the hip. I think he kind of knows when he's getting at stuff that's harif, spicy, sensational, will get people discussing it, effectively. So I don't know what the correct response to that is. Some people are just full out condemning and doing that whole thing, or the cancellations of things, or is it more like I don't know. I don't know how you respond to that.
It's a two-way street, because is he the bad guy, or is the fact that there's a market for it the problem? People are watching it, and that's his job, and that's what he does. So that's what he's gonna do. The fact that it gets so many views is the disturbing part.
The thing is, he also had Ari Shafir on and was like, I love that. It's yeshiva education sounds amazing. It sounds like an amazing education. At first I didn't realize how holding Ari Shafir is, went to serious.
Oh yeah.
Where did he go?
I think he grew up in Silver Spring.
Yeah, he went to, so he was explaining.
He was in Shalavim or something, a pretty serious yeshiva.
So he was explaining it to Tucker, who was very taken by it. He was like, it sounds amazing. So explaining what Talmud is, because there's all this talk about Talmud, and Tucker's you got Dan Bilzerian pulling lines and saying, look, this is what the Jews all believe, having no sense of what Talmud is. So,
he spoke to that? He spoke to Ari Shafir about that?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, and it's a nice clip. No, he was like, what is it like? So is it? And he's like, yeah, you're just dissecting Jewish law all day, and you're learning about these conversations. And Shafir is offering insight as to what Talmud study is. And Tucker's like, that's so cool. That is so cool. So you're just so all day you're basically just you're reading legal documents, basically. That is so cool. That sounds like an amazing education. I love that. And you're just oh, look at Tucker lighting up. And then from TikTok and all the Jewish accounts all of a sudden share a clip of Tucker loving yeshiva education.
Yeah.
So he'll do that. You know what I mean? And then he'll do the other thing.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how calculated that is. I mean, none of these people go to bed thinking they're the bad guy. He thinks he's the good guy. So whatever is going on in his mind, that's part of the calculation there,
In some sense, it could be as innocuous as I'm hosting an open house in college, and I'm having all these people there in my various classes, in my various subjects. Some of them are really smart and interesting to talk to. Some of them are crazy, And some of them are both.
But there's a lot of crazy you can talk to. You can talk to crazy people about UFOs.
Yeah.
You can talk to crazy people about presidential assassinations and 5G. You don't have to talk to the crazy Holocaust deniers.
Yeah, but couldn't you imagine yourself in a conversation at an open house in Maryland with someone who's like, actually, I think Churchill was the villain. I'm telling you, if you actually read about it, like I read about it, the things he did were crazy.
For sure. And I like those conversations.
Yeah.
I'm into them. So
that's the angle. Meaning this guy is coming close to it, but he's not saying kill the Jews. But he is. Yeah, he was.
But it's not like Tucker's at a party and he ran into someone and someone happened to have a camera. He scheduled this guy to come on to talk about a particular topic.
Correct. So therein lies the difference. But I think he's approaching it, in other words, that way. I'm creating a free speech bastion with all. That's why I made the analogy. In other words, the difference is you're not having these conversations with a bunch of beers and everyone's a little buzzed just talking weirdness. You're doing that, but it's entertaining to watch, so you're platforming it for millions of people. And Patrick Bet-David does the same thing. So he'll have an MMA fighter who's got some kind of name. He says, what, do you really think the Jews like control everything? Why do you think the Jews control everything?
Right.
Now, is that a conversation worth having? No, but if you're like sitting around the couch with a bunch of crazy people, sometimes it's kind of fun to listen to in a way. And I think that's what they're doing. They're generating entertainment off of crazy people.
It just goes back to me that their instincts are correct, that there is a market for this type of that there's a market for it now.
That's what I'm saying. Like you're tapping into the fact that there's a market, like there always is a market to hear crazy ideas.
Yeah, specifically about Holocaust denial. Not the crazy idea market, this Holocaust denial market.
But under the same macro umbrella of people like hearing the edgiest, weirdest things sometimes.
Right,
and right now, front
and
center is anti-Semitism and stuff about Jews and curiosity about Jews, which is never good for the Jews.
Right.
Like when people start like, speaking in all these like with questionable intentions and trying to spotlight malfeasance or whatever, or trying to create a narrative about Jews that's negative. But it's also like if UFOs were the talk of the town, then Tucker might be having the craziest UFO guys on to do it. And like there's a part like someone like Rogan on the other hand, I think is more genuinely curious, and so he doesn't have patience for the nonsense talk as much as Tucker, who's like, I think this will do really well. I think this conversation's really resonant right now. So let's go there.
That would be quite a moment if Rogan had someone like that on.
Yeah,
that would be quite a moment. I really hope that doesn't happen.
I mean, he's had Abby Martin on. Rogan's had a share of people on who I find really objectionable. He's had Roger Waters on.
Right. No, but talking to like a historian. Who's different.
A Holocaust denier?
Abby Martin is like a journalist, and it's like it's pretty common to find that kind of opinion out there.
A journalist who maybe enjoyed a falafel sandwich. That was one of the best takedowns ever. Not even fit to be a mother. But anyway, I don't know I think there's standards there is the thing, and I'm not sure if Tucker's metric is more about like, let's create some scintillating conversations here. Not with any moral, like an amoral standard. If it's going to resonate and create a buzz, I'm in.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what's driving it,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, therein lies the.
Hopefully, we'll have some good news soon.
Yeah.
Some better news.
We should have only positive things. Yeah.
Amen.
Crazy times. Amen. Amen. To be continued. As far as podcast stuff, we're going to be updating everybody on sort of the next season of Ami's House.
Yeah, we took a break. The last 2 weeks you were on tour with Montes, and I'm figuring some stuff out.
Yeah.
I mean, I was working.
Yeah.
So we got some. We got podcast. It's going to get better and better.
Patreon is building, which is exciting, and we appreciate all of our patrons who've been joining at Ami's House on Patreon. So keep joining that, and there'll be more to come.
Yes, sir.
Good night and good luck.